The Solara sector had always been a dangerous part of the galaxy. Many species avoided it because the planets were harsh and pirates ruled the space lanes. Ships were often lost, settlements were raided, and cries for help rarely reached anyone capable of responding. But today, a new sound filled the void. A low, vibrating hum of massive engines, growing louder as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. The Deathworlder fleet appeared like a force of nature. Ships of all sizes built to withstand the deadliest planets moved in perfect formation. Their armor was thick, their engines powerful, and their weapons capable of leveling the strongest fleets. Even from orbit, the presence of these humans caused the pirates to pause. The stories were true. These were humans who could survive anywhere, conquer any challenge, and yet, some of them had come not to destroy, but to protect. On the small planet of Aelora, a fragile world covered in forests of shimmering crystals and shallow rivers of liquid light, a message blinked across a Lyrian communicator. The Lyrians, the planet's only intelligent species, were small and delicate. Their bodies could not endure even mild physical stress, and they had never built any weapon capable of defending themselves. Their civilization thrived on knowledge and art, but in the harsh reality of the galaxy, that was no protection. A council of elders gathered in a high crystal tower, the colors of their homeworld glowing softly on their faces. "The humans have arrived," whispered Elder Mary, her voice trembling. "The Deathworlders. I never thought I would see them." "They are terrifying," said Elder Juno. "Their ships alone could destroy half of our villages. And yet—" "They answer our call, why?" Mary looked out the wide window at the fleet now hovering above the planet's largest city. "Perhaps because we needed them. Perhaps because, unlike the others, they do not fear using their strength for good." The Deathworlders had heard the Lyrian distress signal while passing nearby. Normally, they avoided political disputes, wars between empires, and petty conflicts. But the Lyrians' message was different. It spoke of vulnerability, of repeated attacks, of a species facing extinction not from natural forces but from cruelty. And for the Deathworlders, humans who had survived the galaxy's deadliest worlds, cruelty against the weak was unacceptable. The fleet descended carefully. Unlike many conquerors, they did not strike immediately. The humans moved with discipline and patience. Smaller ships, nimble and shielded, entered the atmosphere, scanning the land for dangerous wildlife, unstable terrain, and areas where the Lyrians might be hiding. They wanted to ensure that nothing would be harmed by their arrival. On the ground, the Lyrians gathered near the landing site. They had never seen humans before, and the sight was overwhelming. The tallest human, even crouching, was more than twice the height of any Lyrian. Their armor gleamed, scarred from countless battles, and weapons were holstered, though clearly visible. But their posture was calm and their movements careful. This was not an invading army. This was a force arriving to protect. Captain Arik, the fleet commander, stepped forward from the lead ship. His face was stern, marked by years of survival on planets where death was constant, yet his eyes held a quiet warmth. He raised a hand in greeting. "We are here to help," he said, his voice clear even through the translator. "We have come because we believe no being should live in fear when we can intervene." "Your people are not alone anymore," the Lyrians stared in awe. They had never imagined that humans could care about such small, fragile creatures. "But why?" asked Mary, stepping forward. "Your kind. You survive where no others can. You conquer worlds that would kill anyone weaker than you, and yet you come to save us." Arik paused, thinking carefully. "Strength is only valuable if it is used wisely. We survive where others perish so that those who cannot defend themselves may live. That is why we exist, not to dominate but to protect." A ripple of whispers passed through the Lyrians. They were not used to such words. Many species in the galaxy would take advantage of weakness, but the humans seemed different. The landing was delicate. The Deathworlders deployed small teams first, equipped with shields and medical supplies. They began inspecting the surrounding forests and rivers, identifying dangerous predators and unstable terrain. They taught the Lyrians simple survival measures, how to recognize signs of predatory wildlife, where to find safe water, and how to build temporary shelters that could withstand the environmental dangers of their planet. Meanwhile, the pirates that had been terrorizing Aelora began to notice the new presence. From the far reaches of space, their ships approached, expecting an easy victory against the small, defenseless world. But what they saw made even hardened pirate captains hesitate. The Deathworlders did not panic or scramble. They prepared, using the land and environment to their advantage. Captain Arik gathered his team. They expect fear. They expect weakness. But here we are the predators. We know the land better than they do. Today, they will learn that cruelty has a price. The first skirmish occurred in the floating crystal forest near the Lyrian city. Pirates descended in small attack ships, firing indiscriminately. The Deathworlders had anticipated this. Using the planet's natural hazards, they turned the terrain into a trap. Crystal spikes, shifting rivers, and sudden geysers of steam created a deadly maze for the invaders. One by one, pirate ships were forced to retreat or were incapacitated without harming a single Lyrian. The Lyrians watched, breathless, as humans moved with uncanny precision. Each action was calculated, every movement intentional. They began to understand that these humans were not only strong, they were smart, patient, and disciplined. They were a species that could survive anything, not just because of brute force but because of intelligence and unity. After the battle, Captain Arik addressed the Lyrians once more. "We are not here to rule your world. We are here to ensure that you may live freely. We fight so that you do not have to. That is what it means to be a Deathworlder, strength with purpose." Elder Mary felt a strange warmth. Perhaps we are meant to learn from them, not just to survive, but to grow. As night fell over Alora, the Lyrians saw the human fleet illuminated by the planet's twin moons. Ships glinted in silver and gold, reflecting on the rivers below. The humans had become a shield, a promise that even in a galaxy filled with danger, those who could not defend themselves were not entirely alone. But the Deathworlders did not stop there. Captain Arik knew that the pirates would return, and that other threats might be lurking in the shadows of nearby systems. He called a council among his officers. "This is only the beginning," he said. "We do not conquer. We protect, and in this galaxy, protection is often more difficult than war. We must teach them and prepare them for what is to come." The Lyrians, though small and fragile, felt hope for the first time in generations. They began helping the humans, providing knowledge of their planet, showing safe pathways, and sharing their understanding of the environment. Slowly, a bond formed, a fragile trust between a species used to surviving and a species used to protecting. As dawn broke over the crystal forests, the first lesson was clear. Survival was not only about strength, it was about unity, intelligence, and courage. The Deathworlders were here, and their presence meant that the galaxy's most vulnerable had a chance to live and grow. Yet, somewhere in the depths of space, the mercenary forces that had plagued the sector noticed the human fleet. They sent encrypted signals back to their leaders promising retaliation. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. But the humans, the Deathworlders, were ready, and in this readiness lay hope for Alora, for the Lyrians, and perhaps for countless others who might one day need their protection. Captain Arik gazed at the horizon, the twin moons reflecting in his eyes. "We survive so that others may live," he whispered to himself. "And that is worth every risk." The first day ended with the planet safe, the Lyrians inspired, and the Deathworlder fleet poised for the challenges that lay ahead. This was only the beginning of a story that would span the stars, a story where the strongest of humanity would fight not for glory, but for the survival of the weakest in the galaxy. The morning sun rose over Alora, scattering light across the crystal forests. The Lyrians moved carefully through their city, their fragile forms reflecting soft rays of color. Though the humans had saved them the previous day, they knew danger still lingered. The pirates had retreated, but the galaxy rarely allowed peace without cost. Captain Arik stood on a high ridge overlooking the city with his second-in-command, Commander Tessa. The wind whistled past their armor, carrying the faint scent of alien flora and the hum of distant rivers. "They will return," Arik said quietly. "Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but they will come back expecting the same easy victory. And we cannot allow that." Tessa nodded, scanning the horizon through her optics. "We have the advantage here. The terrain, the wildlife, even the weather, all of it can be turned against them. But we cannot protect them forever if we do not teach them to survive." Arik turned his gaze to the Lyrian city below. Small, delicate beings moved carefully through crystal streets, their eyes wide with wonder and trust. "Then that is what we do," he said. "We make them partners in their own survival." The Deathworlders split into teams, each assigned to teach the Lyrians different survival skills. One team worked on camouflage techniques, showing the Lyrians how to blend with the shimmering crystal trees and glowing rivers. Another team demonstrated early warning systems, simple methods using sound, light, and reflections to detect approaching danger. A group of Lyrian children followed a young Deathworlder named Jaren, who crouched low on the forest floor, pointing to tiny shifts in light caused by a passing predator. "See?" Jaren whispered. "This movement tells us something is near. We cannot fight it, but we can avoid it." The children practiced carefully, learning how to move silently and remain hidden. Their movements were slow and cautious, but their understanding grew with every step. The adults watched, amazed at the humans' patience and teaching methods. Meanwhile, Captain Arik and his officers worked on fortifying the city itself. They studied the natural terrain, tall crystal spires, fast-flowing rivers, and dangerous cliffs, and turned them into defensive advantages. They built barriers that could withstand bombardment, but would not harm the environment. They positioned sensors and small automated defenses at strategic points, creating zones where the Lyrians could retreat if attackers arrived. By midday, the fleet detected incoming signals, pirate ships returning from the outer systems. This time, they were not scouting. They were moving to attack. But Arik was ready. He called the Lyrians together. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice calm and firm. "Today you will see that danger is not always defeat. Today you will see that knowledge, planning, and courage can turn fear into protection." The Deathworlders moved into position. Smaller ships darted through the forests and rivers, while larger vessels took orbit above the city, scanning for enemy ships. The pirates arrived in waves, confident that the fragile world would crumble under their assault. But the humans were already several steps ahead. The first pirate ships entered the atmosphere expecting an easy strike. Immediately, they were funneled into natural choke points between crystal spires. Automated defenses carefully hidden, fired nets and magnetic traps grounding their ships without destruction. Panic spread among the pirate ranks as they realized they had been outmaneuvered. On the ground, the Lyrians watched in awe. Humans moved like predators who knew every secret of the land. Arik led a team through the forest, setting decoys and lures. When the pirates pursued, they found themselves entangled in the environment itself, slowed by hidden pits, streams of sticky sap, and sudden rockfalls triggered by subtle mechanisms. Elder Mary, standing beside her council, whispered, "They are teaching us without words. Every movement, every choice. It is a lesson in survival." Indeed, every action the Deathworlders took was both defensive and instructive. They protected the Lyrians while simultaneously showing them how to use the land, the weather, and even the wildlife to their advantage. It was not just about fighting. It was about understanding, anticipating, and adapting. As the battle continued, one pirate ship attempted to flank the city using a river route. It collided with a carefully prepared trap, a section of the river rigged with floating crystal barriers and energy nets. The ship became entangled, unable to move, while a group of young Lyrian volunteers activated warning lights they had learned to use, signaling its location to the Deathworlders. Captain Arik smiled, watching the pirates' frustration. "Strength without strategy is wasted," he said to Tessa, "and knowledge is the greatest weapon of all." After hours of careful maneuvering, the pirate ships were forced to retreat. None of the Lyrians were harmed. Their city remained intact. The humans had won not by brute force, but by turning the environment itself into a shield. When the battle ended, the Lyrians gathered in the central square. They had seen humans in action, and they had learned that survival was not simply running or hiding. It was understanding the world and using it to their advantage. Elder Juno stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "You have saved our lives. But more importantly, you have shown us how to protect ourselves. You have given us hope." Arik shook his head gently. "Hope is only the beginning. Strength, preparation, and courage are what will keep you safe. Remember this, you do not need to be like us to survive. You need to be aware, careful, and united." Over the next few days, the Deathworlders continued training the Lyrians. They taught simple strategies for defense, escape, and communication. They showed them how to set traps for predators, how to camouflage their homes, and how to read signs in the environment that indicated danger. One Lyrian, a young artist named Kira, approached Jaren while he was demonstrating camouflage. "Why do you do all this?" she asked softly. "Why do humans care for creatures so small and weak?" Jaren smiled. Because we know what it is to face death every day, and we also know what it means to protect life. Strength is not just survival, it is a responsibility. By the end of the week, the city was transformed. Small outposts stood along the borders of the forests, warning of approaching threats. Lyrian volunteers patrolled lightly, signaling movements with simple lights and sounds. They were still fragile, still physically weak, but they had gained a new kind of strength, knowledge and confidence. Captain Arik convened a meeting with his officers. "The Lyrians are learning faster than expected," he said, "but we must remain vigilant. This sector is not free of danger, and other species may attempt to exploit them. We cannot stay forever, but we can leave them capable of surviving." Tessa nodded. "The pirates will regroup and perhaps stronger forces will come. But the Lyrians now know that they are not helpless. They know that strategy, unity, and preparation can protect them where weapons alone cannot." That night, as the twin moons of Elora reflected in the rivers and crystal towers, the humans and Lyrians stood together in the central square. The air was calm but full of promise. For the first time, the Lyrians felt not just relief from immediate danger but confidence in their own abilities. Elder Mary spoke softly to a group of children. "See the humans. They are strong, yes, but they are more than that. They are wise, patient, and kind. And if we remember what they have taught us, we too can survive, even in a world that seems too harsh for us." Captain Arik watched from a ridge, a small smile on his face. They had won the battle, but the larger war was just beginning. The pirates would not give up easily, and the galaxy held threats that no one could yet imagine. But for the first time in many generations, Elora was no longer just a fragile world at the mercy of danger. It had defenders, teachers, and a path to survival that no enemy could easily break. The first lesson had been learned. Survival was not just strength, it was intelligence, preparation, and unity. And with those lessons, even the most vulnerable species could hope to thrive in a galaxy filled with danger. Captain Arik turned to his officers. "We stay vigilant. We teach, we protect. That is the way of the Deathworlders. And one day, perhaps, this small world will show the galaxy that strength is not only in the body, but in the mind, the heart, and the courage to face what others cannot." As the stars shone brightly above, the Deathworlder fleet remained in orbit, a silent promise to the Lyrians. They were not alone. And as long as humans watched over them, even the galaxy's most dangerous threats could be met with hope. Weeks passed on Elora, and the Lyrians began to feel a new sense of safety. Their city thrived under the guidance of the Deathworlders. The crystal forests and glowing rivers no longer seemed threatening, but instead offered opportunities for defense and growth. Children learned to hide in plain sight. Elders could detect danger earlier than ever, and even the weakest among them felt confidence in their ability to survive. Captain Arik walked through the city one morning, observing the results of their efforts. A small group of Lyrian youths practiced signaling and movement drills near the river, while others worked on simple shelters that could withstand storms or attacks. Every now and then a child would glance up at Arik and smile, and he would nod in encouragement. Commander Tessa joined him, her arms crossed as she surveyed the horizon. "They're improving quickly," she said, "but improvement brings attention. I've been monitoring the outer systems and there's something troubling." Arik's brow furrowed. "Go on." "Pirate activity is increasing," Tessa explained. "But it's not random. We've traced transmissions from multiple sectors and it appears to be organized by a single mercenary corporation. They've been attacking vulnerable planets all over this region. Elora is just one of many targets." Arik's eyes narrowed. "So this isn't just a local problem. It's bigger." "Much bigger," Tessa nodded. "They're efficient, well-funded, and ruthless. If we leave after preparing the Lyrians, other systems will suffer. But we can't protect the entire sector indefinitely. Our fleet is strong but finite. This raises a question we must face. Do we intervene beyond Elora?" Arik stayed silent for a moment, watching a Lyrian family practice emergency drills. Their fragile bodies moved carefully but confidently. He knew that humanity's survival on countless death worlds had taught him a valuable lesson. Strength carries responsibility. But responsibility had limits. Every decision came with a cost. That evening, the Deathworlder commanders gathered aboard the flagship. Officers from across the fleet joined the council room, their faces lined with experience and seriousness. Holographic maps of the sector displayed pirate activity, showing hundreds of vulnerable worlds, most without the means to defend themselves. One officer, Lieutenant Rin, spoke first. "We cannot save every world. Even if we tried, the corporation will simply move faster than us. And spreading ourselves too thin will leave all worlds vulnerable." Another officer, Commander Sela, shook her head. "But if we do nothing, countless innocents will be enslaved, or destroyed. Humanity has survived where others fail, not for glory or conquest, but to protect. Can we ignore this responsibility?" A heavy silence filled the room. Arik finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Strength without purpose is empty. If we survive only to exist for ourselves, what is the value of our endurance? We endure to protect, to teach, and to guide. That is why we survive. And if we can prevent harm when we have the ability, then we must act." The council members exchanged glances. Some nodded in agreement. Others hesitated, understanding the risks. Expanding their mission could provoke retaliation on a scale they had never faced. Entire fleets might attack, and countless lives could be lost in the effort. Finally, Tessa added, "We can't protect every system at once, but we can prioritize. We can gather intelligence, strike strategically, and form alliances with the species we can teach. That way our efforts have a lasting effect." Arik's face softened. "Then that is our path. We do not conquer. We do not exploit. We intervene where we are needed most, and we leave each world stronger than we found it." The decision made, the Deathworlder fleet prepared to extend their mission beyond Alora. Scout ships were sent to neighboring systems, reporting on planets under attack, populations at risk, and resources available for defense. The Lyrians, eager to assist, began providing intelligence about trade routes, predator behavior, and subtle environmental clues. Even a species considered weak could contribute in ways that mattered. Days later, a scout ship returned with alarming news. A nearby system, the Thalen Expanse, had several planets under siege. Pirates had captured vital food supplies, enslaved local populations, and destroyed habitats. The fleet convened again to plan their response. Arik spoke to the assembled commanders. "We face a choice. We can send a portion of the fleet to the Thalen Expanse, leaving fewer resources here, or we can strengthen Alora and risk innocent lives elsewhere. Our duty is clear. We intervene." Preparations began immediately. The fleet split into specialized teams, one to remain in Alora, continuing to train the Lyrians, and another to travel to the Thalen Expanse. The Lyrians, though nervous at first, offered to help. Elder Mary approached Captain Arik. "Your mission is noble," she said, "but it frightens us. You risk yourselves for beings you do not even know." "Why?" Arik smiled faintly. "Because we know what it is to face death and fear. Because we have seen weakness and cruelty, and because no one else will act if we do not. Strength is not measured by survival alone. It is measured by what we choose to protect." As the fleet departed, the Lyrians waved, their small hands trembling in awe. They had come to understand the essence of humanity in these Deathworlders: survival with purpose, strength with responsibility, and courage without selfishness. Upon reaching the Thalen Expanse, the fleet faced their first large-scale challenge. The Mercenary Corporation had fortified several planets with orbital defenses, automated drones, and aggressive patrols. These were not mere pirates, they were highly trained soldiers with advanced technology. Even the Deathworlders' formidable skills would be tested to the limit. Captain Arik convened his officers in the command room. "This is not just a rescue mission," he said. "This is a test of our philosophy. We fight not to conquer, but to protect. Every life we save, every species we empower, strengthens the galaxy against cruelty. We do not seek glory. We seek survival with meaning." The fleet moved in carefully, using guerrilla tactics, stealth approaches, and the knowledge of local environments. Automated drones detected patrol patterns, orbital scans identified weaknesses in defenses, and small boarding teams disabled key installations without unnecessary destruction. Every strike was calculated, precise, and humane. On the surface of one Thalen planet, humans worked alongside local species, teaching them simple defensive methods. They reinforced shelters, created safe pathways, and shared survival techniques adapted to the planet's unique challenges. By combining knowledge with local resources, they were able to defend settlements while also preparing inhabitants to protect themselves in the future. Lieutenant Rin observed the locals, impressed. "They are fragile," he said, "yet intelligent. With the right guidance, they can survive anything. This is what makes our efforts meaningful. We do not just fight, we empower. Commander Sela nodded. And every world we save becomes a partner. Every species we teach strengthens the galaxy's resistance to tyranny. One day, perhaps, these species will protect others, just as we protect them now. The moral weight of their mission was clear. This was not just war. It was responsibility in action. Each decision carried consequences, and each choice reflected the values the Deathworlders upheld. Strength used to defend, wisdom used to guide, and courage used to inspire. After days of careful operation, the fleet succeeded in disabling the corporation's primary installations. Settlements were liberated, enslaved populations freed, and critical resources restored. Not a single unnecessary life was lost, and the locals gained the knowledge and confidence to continue defending themselves. Captain Arik stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking at the liberated worlds below. "This is why we endure," he said quietly to Tessa. "Not for ourselves, not for conquest, but for the weak, the vulnerable, the innocent. Our survival is meaningful only when it protects others." Tessa smiled. "The galaxy may not understand our methods," she said, "but they will understand our results." The fleet remained in the Thalen expanse for a few more days, ensuring stability, teaching further survival strategies, and reinforcing defenses. Then, after confirming that the systems were prepared to protect themselves, they set course for the next sector. Even as they left, the Deathworlders knew the challenges ahead would only grow. The mercenary corporation was vast, and countless species remained at risk. But the fleet moved with confidence, guided by a simple principle. Survival carries meaning only when it serves life beyond oneself. As the stars stretched before them, Captain Arik reflected on the mission so far. The Lyrians had learned to survive. The Thalen expanse had gained hope and resilience, and the Deathworlders themselves had reaffirmed a truth long known to humanity. Strength is nothing without purpose, and courage is measured not by the battles one wins, but by the lives one protects. This moral clarity would guide them into the next battles, the next systems, and the next challenges. For in a galaxy filled with danger and cruelty, the Deathworlders' greatest power was not their weapons or survival skills. It was their unwavering commitment to protect those who could not defend themselves. And with that commitment, even the most vulnerable species in the galaxy could begin to believe in hope once more. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless worlds, many of which were unprotected and vulnerable. After liberating the Thalen expanse, the Deathworlder fleet knew their mission could not stop there. Strength and skill alone were not enough. They had to act strategically, teaching survival while defending the defenseless. Captain Arik called a meeting with his commanders in the flagship's command room. "We cannot save every world at once," Arik began, his voice steady and commanding. "But we can choose the most vulnerable and ensure they survive. Every species we protect strengthens the galaxy. Every life we save matters. We fight not for conquest, but for hope." Commander Tessa spread out a holographic map, showing multiple star systems marked with high-risk signals. "We have received intelligence from the scouts. These systems are under siege. Some species are weak and technologically limited. Others have defenses but are overwhelmed. We must prioritize and act quickly." Lieutenant Rin spoke up. "We should focus on the species that are unable to defend themselves at all." "They are the ones most at risk," Arik nodded. "Agreed. But even those with some defenses may need guidance. Our goal is to teach, not only fight. Every world we visit must leave stronger than we found it." The fleet divided into specialized teams. Some ships would remain in each newly liberated system to train local species in survival and defense strategies. Others would continue scouting and engaging hostile forces. The Deathworlders were efficient, combining their combat experience with teaching methods adapted to each species' abilities. The first stop on this new campaign was the jungle world of Virelia. Dense forests covered the planet, filled with enormous dangerous predators and thick fog that limited visibility. The native Virelians were strong but slow and unfamiliar with technology. The planet had been raided by pirates and mercenary forces, leaving the population scattered and terrified. Captain Arik led a ground team into the heart of the forest. They moved cautiously, using the environment to their advantage just as they had on Alora. The Virelians followed, their curiosity mixed with fear. Jaren, the young Deathworlder who had trained the Lyrian children, knelt near a predator's tracks. "See these marks?" he said. "They tell us where the danger is and how it moves. You must learn to read the land if you want to survive." The Varelians observed carefully, imitating his movements. Slowly, they began to understand patterns in the forest, using the terrain to avoid predators and set up safe pathways. At the same time, the fleet encountered hostile ships in orbit above Varelia. Automated weapons and boarding drones attacked, expecting easy resistance. But the Deathworlders adapted. Using guerrilla tactics and the planet's thick fog, they outmaneuvered the attackers. Orbital bombardments were precise, targeting enemy ships while leaving the surface untouched. Commander Tessa coordinated reinforcements with Lieutenant Rin. "We cannot fight the galaxy's threats blindly," she said. "We must teach the locals to defend themselves and understand strategy. They must become partners, not just witnesses." By the end of the first week, the Varelians had learned to fortify their villages, create warning systems, and use the dense forests as natural protection. The pirates were forced to retreat, unable to strike without risking destruction. Captain Arik looked at the Varelian leader, a tall and muscular figure named Kale. "You have strength," Arik said, "but strength alone is not enough. Knowledge, preparation, and unity will keep your people safe long after we leave." Kale bowed slightly. "We understand. We will protect ourselves and others. Your guidance is more valuable than any weapon." The fleet's campaign continued, moving from planet to planet. Each world presented unique challenges. Frozen wastelands with hidden crevices and blizzards, desert planets with scorching heat and sandstorms, ocean worlds where civilizations lived on floating platforms. The Deathworlders adapted their strategies to the environment and the local species' abilities, always teaching survival and defense techniques alongside their protective missions. On the desert world of Zirath, for example, they taught a small species called the Creons to find hidden water sources, build underground shelters, and use sandstorms to hide their movements. On the ocean planet of Thalassa, they worked with the aquatic Thylans to create safe currents, detect predators, and communicate quickly between floating settlements. Throughout their campaign, the Deathworlders never imposed themselves. They did not take over governments, claim resources, or demand loyalty. Instead, they acted as teachers and guardians, showing that humanity's strength could be used for protection rather than domination. Meanwhile, the mercenary corporation that had once targeted Aelora regrouped. They realized the humans were more than a fleet. They were a force of hope that inspired local populations to resist. The corporation sent larger fleets equipped with advanced weapons and AI drones, expecting a decisive victory. Captain Arik observed the incoming threat from the flagship's bridge. "They think we fight alone," he said. "But we do not. Every species we protect is an ally. Every world we save strengthens the galaxy. They underestimate the power of unity." The Deathworlders prepared for battle. Smaller ships carried scouts and strike teams, while larger vessels coordinated orbital defenses. The locals, now trained in basic tactics, helped set traps, provide reconnaissance, and support evacuations if necessary. The first engagement took place near the Varelian jungles. Pirate ships advanced, firing weapons blindly into the dense canopy. The Deathworlders and Varelians moved together, using the trees and fog to hide. Ambushes disabled several ships, and environmental traps forced the remaining attackers to retreat. On the ground, Jaren led a group of Varelian volunteers, teaching them to observe the enemy and react without panic. "Strength is nothing if you do not know how to use it," he reminded them. "Every move counts." After the battle, Captain Arik addressed his officers. "Every victory here is more than a fight," he said. "It is proof that even the weakest species can survive with guidance. This is our mission, to create hope, to teach survival, to protect life in every corner of the galaxy." As weeks turned into months, the Deathworlder fleet became a symbol of hope. Messages of gratitude and admiration reached them from liberated worlds. Local species began forming alliances, sharing knowledge, and preparing to defend one another. The galaxy was changing, not because humans conquered it, but because humans showed others that survival was possible when knowledge, courage, and unity were combined. Captain Arik watched from the bridge as children on a liberated world played near a fortified village, laughing without fear. Elder leaders discussed plans for local defense and community cooperation. The Deathworlders had given them tools, but the species themselves were taking responsibility for their futures. "Every species we save multiplies our impact," Commander Tessa said, standing beside Arik. "One day the galaxy will be stronger because of them." Arik nodded. "And we will continue to guide them, protect them, and teach them. The mercenary forces will return, perhaps stronger than ever, but the galaxy will now resist. Strength is more than weapons, it is knowledge, courage, and hope. That is the lesson we carry." The fleet continued its campaign system after system, each world unique and full of challenges. But one principle remained unchanged. Humanity's strength was a shield, not a sword. They did not seek glory or power. They sought survival with purpose. And with every world saved, every species empowered, the Deathworlders proved that the galaxy's most vulnerable could thrive, even in the face of overwhelming danger. By the time the fleet paused to rest near a binary star system, the results of their campaign were clear. Hundreds of worlds had been liberated, thousands of species trained in survival, and countless lives saved. The mercenary corporation had suffered repeated defeats, their influence shrinking as more species resisted tyranny. Captain Arik gazed at the stars, reflecting on the journey so far. "We survive," he said quietly, "so that others may live. But surviving alone is not enough. Survival is meaningful only when it protects life beyond oneself. That is the legacy we leave." The galaxy was dangerous, unpredictable, and vast, but the Deathworlder fleet had begun to turn fear into hope, weakness into strength, and survival into a shared responsibility. And as they prepared to move to the next sector, they knew that the campaign was far from over. Every battle, every lesson, and every victory reinforced a single truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, not its ability to survive anywhere, but its ability to inspire, protect, and empower those who could not defend themselves. And with that truth guiding them, the Deathworlders pressed onward, determined to ensure that no species would ever face the galaxy's dangers alone again. The galaxy had changed. Once, countless worlds had trembled under the threat of pirates and mercenary forces. Now many of those same worlds were alive with hope, resilience, and determination. The Deathworlder fleet, once feared only for their survival on deadly planets, had become a symbol of protection and strength. Yet, even with the victories behind them, new challenges awaited. Captain Arik stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at a cluster of planets that had been identified as under imminent threat. Reports from scout ships indicated that the mercenary corporation was planning a final, massive strike. They intended to reclaim lost systems, eliminate the fledgling defenses, and reassert their control over vulnerable species. Arik's eyes hardened. "They think they can undo what we've accomplished," he said quietly. "But they underestimate the unity we've built. Every species we've protected is now capable of defending itself, and we will not let them destroy what we fought to save." Commander Tessa approached, her voice calm but filled with determination. "It will be a large-scale battle, but we have the advantage. Knowledge, preparation, and the allies we've empowered are on our side." Arik nodded. "Then we end this. Today we show that survival with purpose is stronger than greed and cruelty." The fleet split into multiple divisions. One group would engage the mercenary corporation's fleet directly in space, using tactical maneuvers learned from countless Deathworld battles. Another group would coordinate with liberated planets, ensuring local populations could defend themselves and support the attack. Small teams of humans and trained local species moved through key systems, disabling enemy infrastructure and cutting off reinforcements. On the first planet of engagement, the humans coordinated with the Thalans, the Varelians, and the Lyrians. Together they created a network of defenses, traps, and communication systems. The combined force surprised the mercenary fleet. Automated drones were intercepted, orbital attacks were neutralized, and ambushes on surface forces crippled the corporation's plans. Captain Arik led a boarding team to disable the corporation's command ship. Moving swiftly, they infiltrated corridors filled with high-tech security measures. The team worked in silence, relying on precision and coordination rather than brute force. Every step was calculated, ensuring no unnecessary destruction and no lives lost among civilians. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other Deathworlder teams were teaching local species to fight strategically. On the frozen planet of Cryosia, Humans and native species used the harsh environment to their advantage, luring enemy forces into ice crevices and blizzards. On the desert world of Xyrath, sandstorms concealed movements and allowed small teams to disable enemy supply lines. On Alora, the Lyrians coordinated warning signals and observation posts, ensuring no hostile force could approach unnoticed. Back on the flagship, Captain Arik monitored the battle. "Every species we've helped is contributing," he said. "They are no longer weak. They are partners. They are survivors. And together, we are stronger than any force the corporation can send." The battle intensified as the mercenary corporation realized their plans were failing. Their advanced ships built for conquest found themselves trapped, outmaneuvered, and under constant pressure. The Deathworlders had turned every planet into a fortress, every local species into a guardian, and every move into a lesson in survival. Lieutenant Rin observed the chaos from his station. "They thought fear would work," he said. "But the galaxy has learned courage. They thought strength alone mattered, but intelligence and preparation win every time." Commander Sella smiled, and humanity taught them. Strength with purpose, courage with discipline, survival with meaning. That is what makes us different. On the corporation's command ship, the leaders realized defeat was inevitable. Arik's boarding team had disabled critical systems, orbital defenses were falling, and local populations were resisting more effectively than they could handle. Faced with overwhelming opposition, they attempted one final assault but were intercepted and neutralized without unnecessary loss of life. The battle was over. Systems once under tyranny now had hope, resources restored, and defenses ready. The Deathworlders had not only won, they had empowered countless species to continue protecting themselves. As the fleet regrouped, Captain Arik addressed his officers. "We did not fight for conquest or glory. We fought because strength is meaningless without purpose. We survive so others may live, and today the galaxy is stronger because of it." Back on Alora, the Lyrians celebrated with a quiet joy. Elder Mary spoke to her people. "Look at what has been accomplished. We were fragile, alone, and terrified. Now we are part of a larger galaxy that stands against cruelty. Humanity has shown us what it means to survive and protect." Young Kira, the artist, added, "And they have taught us that we are capable too. We are no longer helpless. We can defend ourselves and we can help others." Captain Arik visited the Lyrians one last time before departing for the next mission. "Remember this," he said. "Strength alone is not enough. Knowledge, courage, unity, and the will to protect others. That is the true measure of survival. Teach what you have learned here. Protect what you hold dear, and one day you may help others as we helped you." Elder Juno bowed respectfully. "We will never forget. Your guidance has changed our world and our hearts. You have given us more than safety. You have given us purpose." The fleet then set course for the edge of the galaxy, prepared to continue their mission wherever they were needed. Each system liberated, each species empowered, added to the growing network of survivors ready to face the galaxy's dangers. Captain Arik reflected on the journey. From Alora to the Thylan Expanse, from the jungles of Veralia to the frozen plains of Cryosia, the mission had grown beyond simple survival. Humanity's role in the galaxy had become clear. They were not conquerors, not rulers, but guardians. Every life protected, every species empowered, every lesson taught, was part of a legacy that would endure far longer than any battle. The mercenary corporation had been defeated, but the galaxy still contained threats, rogue pirates, environmental disasters, and unknown forces in distant systems. Yet the Deathworlders' example had created a lasting impact. The species they protected now had knowledge, confidence, and allies. They could withstand future dangers and even help others in turn. Lieutenant Rin turned to Arik, a hint of awe in his voice. "We survived the deadliest planets, the harshest environments, and the galaxy's fiercest battles. But what we did here, this is something greater than survival." Arik nodded. "Survival is nothing if it does not protect others. Today we ensured that hope lives in the hearts of thousands, maybe millions, across the stars. That is the meaning of our existence." The fleet continued its journey, stars stretching endlessly before them, and as they moved through hyperspace, they carried a promise to the galaxy. That humanity's greatest power was not in weapons, not in strength alone, but in the courage to protect, the wisdom to teach, and the compassion to empower those who could not defend themselves. Across the liberated systems, life began to flourish. Cities rebuilt. Young species grew confident and old species regained hope. Trade routes reopened, education resumed, and communities strengthened. The galaxy was safer, not because a single fleet had won battles, but because countless species had learned to survive, to fight wisely, and to protect one another. On Aelora, the Lyrians placed a monument in the central square. It depicted a human figure standing among smaller beings, arms extended in protection. Beneath it, an inscription read, "Strength without purpose is empty. Courage without care is meaningless. Humanity showed us that to survive is to protect, to endure is to teach, and to live is to help others." Captain Arik gazed at the monument when he returned briefly. He touched the crystal surface lightly. "We do not seek thanks," he murmured. "We seek to ensure life survives no matter the odds. That is enough." The Deathworlder fleet continued its mission, ever vigilant, ever ready. The galaxy's most vulnerable now had champions, teachers, and allies. And humanity's legacy, as guardians, not conquerors, would endure for generations. Even in the farthest reaches of space, the message was clear. No matter how dangerous the galaxy may be, even the weakest and smallest could survive. They had the knowledge, the guidance, and the courage to thrive. And wherever humanity's strength reached, life would have a chance to endure. The Deathworlders looked out at the stars, knowing their work was far from finished. But for now, the galaxy was safer, hope was alive, and the most vulnerable no longer had to face the universe alone. Humanity had survived the deadliest worlds, and now it had ensured that others could too. For in the end, true strength was not measured by survival alone, it was measured by what you do with that strength. And the Deathworlders had proven beyond any doubt that survival was meaningful only when it protected life beyond oneself. The galaxy would remember them, not as conquerors, but as guardians.